So they know that they're not good for each other, but can't seem to let it go. Maybe you've been in this cycle yourself, stuck in the on again, off again relationship cycle with intense highs and crushing lows. But without understanding why it is that anxious and avoidant partners tend to stay in this cycle of connected and disconnected on and off for so long, and why they find it so hard to actually leave each other, to actually break up, then you may find yourself repeating a cycle that may not end well anyways, and you'll end up wasting a lot of your time. So in today's video, we are going to break down why it is that anxious and avoidant partners find it so difficult to actually split up, and what you can do about this so you don't have to find yourself falling in this trap. You can either work it out or find yourself finally able to move on and end things with peace. So first and foremost, I think to understand this topic, you have to start by understanding the subconscious factors that create emotional and psychological attraction. So of course, we have the physiological factors, the genetic factors. We know those. Everybody talks about these things. But what are the actual psychological factors? Because trust me, emotional and psychological factors drive attraction so much more than anything else. How do you know this in your everyday life? Well, have you ever met somebody that you find to be very physically attractive, but you don't find yourself attracted to that person at all because of certain things that they do or their mannerisms or their traits? Or maybe you've seen the reverse in order, where you don't find somebody that physically attractive, but then as you get to know them, you find that you build this intense attraction to them. This is because there are three major things that drive attraction psychologically, which play a crucial role when it comes to the anxious avoidant trap. The first major factor is that we are attracted to people who express our repressed traits. And this is because we are literally looking to form wholeness and homeostasis. We are looking for this in our own internal lives and bodies on a daily basis, and we are looking for this outside of ourselves. So when we attach to somebody who's expressing your repressed traits, we often feel this deep sense of wholeness, and you'll see this a lot. Let me give you a couple of examples. Maybe, for example, you see somebody who you find to be really confident and outgoing. And maybe in your history, you feel like you've been shy or more withdrawn. You may put that on a pedestal and really look up to that person, admire them, feel very attracted to them. And part of what's happening is your subconscious mind is actually attracted to the wholeness, that when you attach to become one, or two people come together to make a whole, so to speak, and all of a sudden you find yourself in this feeling of like, oh, I have that confidence, that outgoing trait closer to me that I feel like is repressed within myself or I don't have access to. Another example of this is you may find somebody who is very mysterious or very assertive, very attractive. And maybe that's because you struggle with those things. Maybe that's because you're too much of a people pleaser. You'll see this all the time when women are attracted to like the bad boys. Usually the actual archetype of women that fall into that specific category are usually women who are the good girls, who usually don't feel like they can set their own boundaries or speak for their own needs or take up too much space. So that's the first part. Okay, there's two other major parts here, and then we're going to explain how this all ties into the anxious avoidant trap. The second part, besides being attracted to people who express your repressed traits, is we are attracted to people who meet our deeply unmet needs. So let's say from childhood, for example, you grew up in a household where your parents were not present. Maybe they were really emotionally unavailable or withdrawn or really busy, and maybe you never really felt seen as a child. Well, if somebody comes into your life and they make you feel really seen or really understood, or they're really present with you, a lot of times that can really ramp this intense feeling of attraction because you're really attracted to the need that that person is meeting in your life. And often there's more than one need when we're deeply attracted to somebody. Maybe somebody makes you feel wanted or important, or maybe somebody makes you feel like they can meet the need for novelty with you and exploration and fun. You'll usually find that whatever's happening, a big point of attraction is, hey, somebody's meeting this deeply unmet need within you. That type of attraction, however, doesn't often sustain a relationship longer term. Point number three, and this is what we invest in the longest term, we invest in people who represent the subconscious comfort zone of how we treat ourselves. What do I mean by this? Well, I mean that somebody is going to treat you the way that you treat yourself, and your conscious mind may not like this. But two things you need to know here really quickly are your conscious mind is responsible for roughly 3 to 5% of all of your beliefs, thoughts, emotions, and actions, while your subconscious is 95 to 97%. So we are making decisions from the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is very survival oriented. So it just wants safety. It equates safety to survival. And so we yearn for familiarity. We invest in familiarity. And what is most familiar is literally the way we treat ourselves. So this is really important when it comes to the anxious avoidant trap. Look at this. Anxiously attached individuals, how do they treat themselves? They often dismiss and avoid their own feelings, their own needs, their own boundaries, right? Anxious, preoccupied people are very attracted to people who will mirror that back to them, and they will invest in that long term. Let's flip it around. Dismissive avoidants are very preoccupied with their own time, their own space, their own ability to regulate themselves, and their own privacy, really. And what are anxious preoccupieds representing? That same preoccupation with the dismissive avoidant. So sometimes we get triggered by somebody, right? It doesn't mean that triggers don't play a role in what creates frustration in our relationship dynamics, but two things that are literally magnetizing the anxious and avoidant attachment styles together are usually they have totally different traits. Okay, so you can look at the anxious attachment style, and they are usually warm, supportive, thoughtful, very present, very emotionally connected, wanting depth and intimacy. And dismissive avoidants are usually very private, assertive, more confident in themselves, in their own space, in their own time. They're very independent, autonomous. They often find themselves in situations where they like that lightness and that freedom. And so, these two, when the subconscious mind is seeking wholeness and homeostasis, there's this magnet between these two that comes together to pull them together. Because once they attach, there's a sense of connection. And between the two, with that attachment, there feels like there's a sense of wholeness. Okay. So then the splitting apart of that is something that creates a lot of pain and suffering, because as we split apart, because maybe we're triggered, we're frustrated, we don't know how to communicate because each attachment style may be so different from each other. I often give this old analogy that your attachment style is the subconscious set of rules that you've learned about love. And so if you can imagine, you sit down to play a board game with somebody and they have a different rule book than you. You have the rules for Monopoly and they have the rules for Scrabble. I mean, you're going to have a lot of friction and frustration because you have a different rule book. You have different expectations for what the game's supposed to look like. And the same thing applies to love, right? Dismissive avoidant partners expect more distance and freedom and autonomy in a relationship and more harmony and ease. Anxiously attached individuals expect more intimacy, more closeness, right? So there's this needs issue that's really coming into play. But then those two other foundational parts of what drives attraction, the somebody expressing your repressed traits and somebody who represents the subconscious comfort zone of how you treat yourself. Those are the things that really, really drive this connection. So when we pull apart this attachment to somebody who makes us feel whole at a subconscious psychological level, it's very painful. And the subconscious mind will do what it can to try to reconnect to that. But then you get this push-pull, where usually what happens is because in this dynamic, the anxious and avoidant partners, they don't know how to communicate about needs very well. They usually have a lot of friction. They're triggering each other. It's almost like these two parts of attraction are not aligned, right? If you take a securely attached relationship, you're going to see they meet each other's needs very effectively. And they might have certain traits that they express that the other represses and vice versa. It's not going to be as strong of an impact, but you're going to see that the needs are very aligned. The traits are going to be pretty much there in some degree. And then there's very much a subconscious comfort zone of how they treat themselves. So you're going to have all three factors of emotional, psychological attraction aligned. And now that's likely to be a relationship that is going to have longevity to it. But with the anxious and avoidant, they have this trait component. The needs are usually completely misaligned, right? They're usually not meeting each other's needs for very long, because in the early dating or honeymoon stage, yes, there's this connection and attraction and things are good. But as things progress, they usually don't know how to communicate properly or meet each other's needs. They usually have totally different needs and expectations for what a relationship looks like. So that's pulling them apart. Then you've got the traits piece pulling them, magnetizing them together. And then they each are so familiar to how they treat themselves. So conscious mind might be like, hey, this isn't a fit. We're not compatible. We're not getting along. We're arguing. I don't understand them. They don't seem to understand me. Like, we're just feeling incompatible. And yet the conscious mind is usually evaluating that. The subconscious mind is like, yes, but they are familiar because they treat you the way you treat yourself. The anxious attachment styles, like, this person dismisses and avoids me. Like, I dismiss my own feelings and needs because I people please so often, and I self-abandon in doing that. And so this feels comfortable, familiar, and thus safe, and thus I want to keep investing. And so you can see these contexts where this push-pull starts to take shape. Now, ultimately, what ends up happening is the needs become so unmet in the relationship that the traits carry less weight. Often at some point in the relationship, the conscious mind has some degree of a role to be able to say, this just is not working. And we are also programmed by association. So once we make enough negative associations to a person or situation, we're likely to go, okay, this just doesn't feel good to keep going back to. And because through repetition, there's usually a lot of pain, arguments, disagreements, eventually we come to associate this person with more pain than pleasure. And at that point, that's usually where the subconscious mind will completely reject a relationship. Now, you can get that back on track by learning to integrate traits, by learning to meet each other's needs, have the language for communicating needs. And you can learn these things also by ensuring that you have a healthy subconscious comfort zone for how you treat yourself, and in turn, communicate how you expect to be treated in that healthy way to somebody else. And if they show up with you, things can really work. But that's going to be for a part 2 video in terms of what to do. I also have a course in detail that goes through all of this that you can check out fully for free. There's actually a spin to win feature right now. But if you spin to win, you can win like a free membership. You can win a free 14-day trial plus a free course, or 7-day trial plus a free course. There's all these different options available, but it gives you access to all the courses when you get in there. So the course you would look at if you're struggling with this right now is the dismissive, avoidant, anxious attachment, or dismissive, avoidant, fearful, avoidant, or dismissive, avoidant, or sorry, fearful, avoidant, anxious attachment relationship. We have them for all the attachment style pairings for insecure attachment styles. You would look that up in your dashboard when you get in, and it will give you a roadmap to how to get through this, how to come out on the other side, and how to really heal. So I'll put a link to that down below. Check it out. It's just there for a limited time. It's a promotion we're just doing for a very short period. And I hope you enjoy. And if you have more questions about this video and this topic, let me know in the comments and I will come and make future content about them. Thank you so much for stopping by. If you don't want to miss any future videos, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, and I'll see you next time.